Welcome everybody to a new analysis of Tradomics. My name is Dario, and in this video we're gonna have a focus on some Swiss stocks selected for you. As usual, we're gonna use the T-cycle analysis, and therefore we're gonna unlock what has happened according to the last analysis. And thanks to the methodology based on cycles, we're gonna predict what's gonna happen to the price in the next weeks. So as always, in the last analysis, I left intentionally these arrows here, and the first company under our radar is Roche. So from this top here that was done on the 25th of October 2024, we have had the closing of an upward cycle, exactly this one, after 30 bars. So after this, we have had another push back to the downside, and from this top here, we can define the beginning of a T plus 2. So this upward cycle from the top to another top as basically closed as life, and from this top here we can define another T plus 2. So I'm gonna update the chart like this. I put T plus 2 here, and we were forecasting further push to the upside. So basically, after this T plus 2, we have had another push to the downside to begin another T plus 2, and then back to the upside. So this cycle here is a positive upward cycle, whilst this one is a negative one. Negative is because the top in which it ended was lower compared to the top from which it started. But this one, the top from which it started, which was on the 9th of October 2024, and this top here is definitely higher. Therefore, this one is positive. And knowing the golden rule of the cycle analysis is that from desktop here to desktop here, we have a total duration of what? 17 bars. 17 bars is not the minimum duration of a T plus 2 of a monthly upward cycle. So given that from here we have a high possibility to have a T plus 2 upward cycle, and here we have just 17 bars, basically for the next week, we are forecasting the price to return in this area. So this area means it's going to return and has to break up the high at 292 Swiss francs. Okay, so for the next week on Roche, this is more on the short term, we can foresee a return back to 292 Swiss francs. So therefore, we foresee um, rise to the upside. Okay, so this it's what concerned the upward cycle, but now we have to study also the other flip of the coin, the downward cycle. I can also update here. We have potentially the beginning of a T plus 1 upward cycle here, because we have 17 bars, and 17 bars is a median duration encompassing between 13 and 22 bars. Regarding the downward cycles, we have at this situation. So we had this T plus 3 that closed here. So this T plus 3 was done as followed, was segmented as a first T plus 1, then we have another cycle, which was T plus 1 plus another T plus 1, and then we had a final downward cycle that was negative of 21 bars. So we had first T plus 1, second T plus 1, third T plus 1, and we had another T plus 1. Okay, so this T plus 1 was total duration 21 bars, which is close to the maximum duration, which is 22 bars. So here we can update the chart as well, and we can put another T plus 1. So this T plus 3 was made of 4 times a T plus 1. So 4 times a cycle that was a B weekly cycle. Okay. And from desktop here, what do we have? Well, given that the push to the upside broke up this swing and also broke up this swing, now here for sure we can have a T plus 2, but we can also have something more than a T plus 2. So let's have a look. So I remove this arrows, and for sure we have the closing of a T plus 3. This close was after 71 bars, so for sure we have a T plus 3 in place, because the push and also the time here is already sufficient to say this is a T plus 3. But we can have even more than a T plus 3. We can have even a T plus 4, or even what? Eventually we can have a T plus 5. Because this cycle here, from this low to this low, um, was made of 219 bars, or 219 days. This cycle, or the duration of this cycle, is already enough for a T plus 5. Okay, so potentially from this top here, we can have even the beginning of a T plus 5. And if from here, of course, now it's too early to say that this is a T plus 5, because we need a certain time of bars over this low. But if here we have a T plus 5, then the target will be this swing. So the target here will be at 308 Swiss francs. Okay, so for the next week, as a key message, we focus more push to the upside, and for sure to break up this high at 292, as here we have more than evidence that is we have a T plus 2, and potentially from here we're gonna have even a T plus 5. It's not given by fact that we have a T plus 5, but at least we have a T plus 3. Okay, so further push to the upside. So let's move to the competitor Novartis. So on Novartis, as for the last analysis, we were forecasting more push to the downside, because here we had a T plus 1 or even a T plus 2 negative, and therefore we were expecting to continue to the downtrend, at least for the minimum and maximum duration of a T plus 1, T plus 2. So we add the continuation to the downtrend for a total duration of 23 bars. So basically here we have a T plus 1H. T plus 1H stands for hybrid cycle. So it's a cycle that is encompassed between a T plus 1 biweekly and a monthly cycle. So here we can update the chart and we can put T plus 1H. And with this low here, we started a new cycle. So analysis correct. We can remove all the arrows here. And from this low, we have 13 bars over this low. So from here, potentially we have the beginning of a T plus 3, or something that is might be even wider than a T plus 3. So basically same situation as Roche. The only thing is that here on Novartis, we are definitely lower the moving average 200 period, and the T plus 5 upwards cycle started after the beginning of the T plus 5 upward cycle at Roche. So basically, Roche has started retracing before Novartis and Novartis after. So this is basically the situation from a time perspective between these two pharmaceutical companies. Now, the thing is that in this case, on Novartis, we have a total duration of 294 bars for this yearly cycle. So therefore, here, potentially, we might start a new T plus 5. But the cycle, the downward cycle here at Novartis is definitely longer compared to Roche, because on Roche we had 219 days, and here we have 294 days, unless the T plus 5 started here, and in this case would be already a negative. So we also have to consider eventually let's see this situation, even if, let me check the time. Yeah, so here potentially we might also consider this low as the beginning of the t plus 5. In this case, we would have already a negative t plus 5, which means that as we have arrived at 112 bars, then we until 189 bars, so until May, first week of May in this case, and this is something I have to warn you, we will have some bounce of the dead cat and we will return back to the absolute lows. So this potentially is a plan B, but we also consider what? The fact that this cycle is closed here, and from here we have the beginning of a t plus 3 or even a t plus 5. Now, how can we understand in which situation we are? Well, the thing is that we have to mark some particular swings. So first, let's have a look at the upward cycle. So from this top, so from the top of the 30th of August 2024 until this top, we had 34 bars. So this is a T plus 2 upward cycle. Then we had another T plus 2 upward cycle. And from here, potentially, we had the beginning of a T plus 3. The duration from this stop to this stop here is 28 bars. So this is a new T plus 2. As this, I mean, this T plus 2 upward cycle is a negative. And now we start a new T plus 2. Now, if we gonna return back to this top here at $92.08, and potentially if we break this this high, we can return to the moving average 200 period, then we have to consider this as potentially the beginning of a T plus 5. In order to develop a T plus 5, though, we have to break this high. Okay, so as far we're not gonna return to this level, then here, in terms of swings, we do not have a T plus 5. And of course, we will need also the second condition, which means that we need a certain amount of candles of 2 degrees less. So we need a total amount of 48 to 89 bars that will stay higher compared to this low, because otherwise the cycle cannot take shape. Okay, so this swing here for the next weeks is absolutely important to understand if we are in a situation in which the price can have a bounce of a dead cat and return back to the absolute lows, or vice versa, if we can start a new T plus 5. Okay, so in order to leave you with a key message is we have to monitor for the next weeks this high, and this high here is, as I said, at 92 Swiss francs. If we are not going to break this high, then we have to see in the next video at which point in time we are. Also, from a downward cycle perspective, from here to here, we have 12 bars. So potentially here we have the beginning of a new weekly cycle. So I leave also the T here, even if also from this low to here we have 6 days. So here, yeah, let's put the T here, because here we have push to the upside that is definitely higher, and here we have just a couple of candles. So in order to be, let's say, conservative, I would consider this one as the beginning of a new weekly cycle. But I can also leave the weekly T cycle here, because now we have a couple of days. It's a little bit early, but 2 days over this low, it's already enough to say this is a weekly. It's really important. Here we have the earnings release. So the earnings release we're going to be issued on the 31st of January. So the earning release will be a triggering point to understand also in which situation we are. Unfortunately, with this setting, we are not able to predict if the earnings will be a triggering point just for one move, either to the upside or to the downside, because this way it's already in place, but also this one is still valid. Okay, this one is still valid because this low here is already has already given a certain push to the upside, and we went over this price level. Okay, so that the situation we have on Novartis. So not clear sign where to go immediately over the short term, but keep monitor this swing at 92.08 Swiss francs. This is the key to understand or to predict statistically the future move of the price, and earnings release will be definitely a triggering point. On Nestle, I kept saying since different months that given that we have this T plus 5 negative yearly downward cycle like this, we can continue to stay in the downtrend until a median to a maximum duration. Now we are at 219 bars, which is, let's say, going towards a median duration, but a median duration will be at 250 days. So basically, we can keep going down if we consider a mid-case scenario until 28th of February 2025, but the worst case scenario will be at 338. So here we can continue to stay in the downtrend until June 2025. So be really careful on Nestle. At the moment, there are no sign of reversal. And as for the last analysis, we were forecasting this move to the downside, and here we had exactly this move. So from this low here to this low here, we had 19 bars. So this was definitely a T plus 1. And now we have to understand if this low will be the absolute low uh, in which the price will not further break anymore this price level at 72.82 Swiss francs. And we have to see if this cycle will be part of something which will be bigger than a T plus 2 eventually, and if we will have enough strength to at least go over this checkpoint. At the moment, and I repeat, at the moment, there are no sign of reversal. Therefore, you have to be really careful to open long position, because the trend is clearly on the downside, and now thanks to this analysis you know how long the trend can continue. So the downward trend can continue until July. Okay, so here we have the confirmation of the T plus 2 upward cycle, and from this top here to this top here we had 21 bars. So this is a T plus 1 upward cycle. Um, so that's the situation we have on Nestle. If we consider more the wider cycles, from this T plus 5, we have this T plus 360 bars. And from this top until here, we have 86 bars. So another thing is that 86 bar is close to the maximum duration of a T plus 3. So here we can have a T plus 2 plus a T plus 2 plus a T plus 1. And if here we close at T plus 3, then we need a certain amount of bars below this top in order to develop another T plus 3, or even worse, a T plus 4. So be really careful, but that we, from this top, potentially we cannot immediately go back, but rather continuing to update the lows. Okay, so that is the situation that we have on Nestle. Last but not least, here we have from this low to this low 12 bars. So here we have at least a T plus 1 or a T plus 2. And if we're going to break this low here, and here we have a T plus 1 or a T plus 2, we can continue to go down until a minimum, medium, maximum duration of a T plus 1 or a T plus 2. So from median duration, now we have 14 days. Median duration of, let's say, or maximum duration of a T plus 1 will be 23 bars. So we can continue to go down until end of the month, or even more if this is a T plus 2. So worst case scenario would be until 27th of February if this low here at the 72.82 Swiss francs will be broken down in the next weeks. But as I said, the trend is definitely it's a downtrend, and there are no sign of reversal at the moment. We are creating swings, this swings, this swing, this one, and this one. In case one of those will be broken, then we have to do some further consideration. But as far as this is not happened, then this is the situation. So further push to the downside. So on Swisslife, we have a stronger uptrend in place. This low here was weekly cycle, but now considering the total amount of candle over that low, which are 26, this low here can be the beginning of a T plus 3 at least, or even a T plus 4. I was also flagging the possibility in the last analysis that that low could have been even the beginning of a T plus 5, because here we have a downward yearly cycle 269 bars. So this is more than a median duration. And in that case, we have the closing of this T plus 2, T plus 5, sorry, and the beginning on another T plus 5. As here we potentially have the beginning of a T plus 5, then we can return back to this absolute top. Okay, we are not so far away on top. And considering the upward cycles here, from this top to this top, we have 37 bars, and here we have had a good push to the downside with breaking this low here. Therefore, I would consider this top as the beginning of eventually a T plus 2. I say eventually because here we don't have so many bars. So if in the next uh, this week or next week, the price will break up immediately this top, here we will not have too many bars to say this is a T plus 2, but rather a T plus 1. Because in order to have a T plus 2, we need at least 8 bars. But a cycle that turns into a positive one after 8 bars, I would tend to consider it more as a T plus 1. Generally, if we consider monthly cycle that turns into a positive one as a T plus 2, on average, the break occurs after 14, 15 bars, but 8 bars, it's particularly little time. 8, 9 bars is a little time, except if there are really a lot of buyers compared to sellers, and therefore the volumetric tendency to the upside is really strong. So as a matter of completeness, I would leave this top as a T plus 1, T plus 2. Let's see if in the next week this top will be broken to the upside, and if this top will be broken to the upside, therefore we will have more push to the upside. The push to the upside statistically is higher compared to the push to the downside, because here we have potentially the beginning of a T plus 5. Therefore, on Swiss Life, I have a tendency to consider more the continuation of this uptrend. And last but not least, let's see which kind of cycle is this one. 22 bars. Here we add the closing of a T plus 1. Okay, so let's keep monitor this swing for the next days. If this is going to be broken up, then T plus 1 and then continuation to the upside. If we will stay lower this stop for some other days, then potentially here we will have a T plus 2. But if in any case this swing will be broken to the upside, we can expect more push. On UBS, as for the last video analysis, we were forecasting either a return to back to the absolute tops immediately, or a retracement and then a return to the tops. So we have had this second situation. The retracement was particularly evident here, and this retracement went lower this low. But here we had just a T plus 2 rather than a T plus 3. And this T plus 5 here was made of, so far, a first T plus 2, second T plus 2, and third T plus 2. And now here we have a total duration of 99 bars. So potentially from this low here, we can have a 6 months, beginning of a 6-month cycle T plus 4. So here the situation is pretty straightforward, because from this top here we have a T plus 5 upward cycle here, one that is now positive, and we can continue to update the absolute tops for a time that is a minimum, medium, and maximum duration of a T plus 5. So far we have reached 157 bars, but we know already that we can keep going up until a minimum duration of 189 bars. So we will be on the safe side until the 3rd of March 2025, but potentially we can extend the rally until a duration that is a median duration, so 250 days, so until 2nd of June 2025, and even beyond, because we can also stretch the duration until 339. This methodology is definitely it has a big advantage over the technical analysis, because you will see that even after the earnings release, the cycle shape will not change. So basically the HFT, the algorithms that are managed by the big bank of investments or any funds that operates on a public equity, that even the earnings will not affect the mid-term situation on UBS. Therefore, we can continue rally to the upside. And here the situation is particularly clear, at least for quantitative traders. Will not be clear for those applying the technical analysis. So from this top here to this top here, we had the 28 bars. Therefore, here we can update the chart with a T plus 2. And this T plus 2 is a positive T plus 2, because the top in which will end is low, higher compared to the top from which it started. And here we have a duration of 17 bars. So therefore here 23 bars, we will return back to the absolute tops. So straightforward analysis, UBS is let's say doomed, or will continue rallying to the upside. So that's the situation we have. On Swisscom, we have had a cycle from this low here to the low that was done on the 20th of December 2024 of 98 bars. So we can consider this cycle closed. even if we don't have too much push to the upside now to begin something that is more than a T plus 2, a T plus 3, or a T plus 4. And this push to the upside um, has not even reached this checkpoint. Okay, so here the situation is that we have now a total duration of 219 bars of this T plus 5. So potentially here we can close the T plus 5, but here the push it's really feeble. So let's consider this cycle here as a T plus 1. And now here we have to make some considerations. So this T plus 2 is confirmed. So in total transparency, I was saying that this top was representing a T plus 5. And because this top was broken up with um, those candles here, the shape could have been this one and this one. So if I stick to the segmentation here, I would expect a return back to the tops. But there is also another consideration to do, and unfortunately this is something that cannot be foreseen before something happens. The situation is that we can have a T plus 5 hybrid, which is basically close to a T plus 6, a 2-year cycle, and 2-year cycle that cannot be divided in a first yearly cycle and a second yearly cycle. So this means that we can have a T plus 6 2-year cycles made of a first T plus 4, a second T plus 4, and a third T plus 4. The total duration here, as you can see, is 368. It's close to a T plus 5, but 368 is a T plus 5 hybrid. And we have to consider this one as a B yearly cycle. And if from here we have a new T plus 5, so a first B yearly cycle plus a yearly cycle, then this shape is not going to happen. Okay, so we cannot return back to the absolute tops, or we are not forced to return back to the tops. And considering now the shape that the chart has, potentially we are more into this second option rather than the first one. So here we have to be careful, and we have to monitor this low here, because if this low will be broken to the downside in the next weeks, then we can attach another cycle to this T plus 5, and then we will have another push back to the downside. Okay, so for let's say a bearish scenario, we have to consider this low at 494.6 Swiss francs. So this is something that doesn't have to be broken. Otherwise, we can continue to update the lows. But from a bullish scenario, we have to close or we have to watch closely this swing. So as far as either this one or this one will not be broken, the market is not giving us, at least for an overnight setting, because on an intraday setting is completely another story. But from an overnight setup, the market is not giving us information to statistically predict in which direction the price will be moved. And given that we cannot forecast it, the recommendation is to watch and wait if you are not a long-term investor on Swisscom, or if you have a trader. If you are a trader, then the suggestion is to look more into the intraday chart. Of course, here I'm not going to show the intraday chart, but if you want to have additional information on the intraday setting, you can also write an email tradomica@gmail.com. At the moment, what I can say here is that from this low here, we have 14 bars. So we have a T plus 2 or even a T plus 3. Okay. We are starting a new cycle that it's at least a T plus 2, but we have to monitor this stop. We are really close to this stop, by the way, and we have a total duration of 24 bars. So if we're gonna break this top, it's true that this cycle will turn to a positive. But considering that we have already a minimum duration of a T plus 2, then opening position at the break of this top will not be really safe, because in a matter of a blink, 1 or 2 or 3 days, whenever, then they can start, or the HFT or the algorithms can start another T plus 2 or even a T plus 3. And therefore, you would be surprised to see a push further back to the downside, especially if this push is not so high. Then if they want to start in the next week a T plus 2 or a T plus 3, then you have to really monitor this low. Okay, so this is really important, so bear it in mind. But now we have a minimum time to close the T plus 2. Okay, eventually, if they're gonna break this top and they will continue the duration of the T plus 2, that can turn into a positive one, and then they have a time that is between 24 and 44 bars, so they of course can continue to go up. And in that case, one of the major resistance will be the moving average 200, which as for the time being is set up at 521 Swiss francs. Okay, so that's the situation we have on Swisscom. On Geberit, we had a news. So as for the last analysis, here we were forecasting a push to the upside in order to close this T plus 2. That's exactly what happened. And this cycle, thanks to this top here, to this candle that was higher compared to this candle, was closed after 29 bars. Okay, so this is the first thing that I have to flag up. And the second thing is that we were going sideways into this channel since May 2024, but thanks to this retracement here, or this pull down, we had the price went lower this limit, so it went outside the channel. So now here we have to make some further considerations. So first of all, let's remove all the arrows here and let's see what has happened. So in order to understand what has happened here, we have to focus on the downward cycles. From this low here to here, we have a negative downward cycle, T plus 3, that for the time being has reached a duration of 55 bars. So 55 bars is a duration that is close to a median duration, but we can also stretch the duration until 89 days. So here on Geberit, we can continue the downtrend until at most 89 days, which means that we can stretch the downtrend until the 6th of March 2025. Just looking at this channel, you can have such precious insights. And if we see more the situation over the shorter term, I can already tell you that here we had a weekly cycle that was broken with this candle today. So here we have a negative weekly cycle, and therefore we can continue to go low not just even tomorrow, but beginning of next week. So beginning of next week, it means from Monday until, if they want, they can keep going down until Monday, 27th of January. Okay, so this will be 2 weeks, because minimum duration will be Monday, 20th of January, but they can also stretch the duration until Monday, 27th of January. Okay, so I foresee more push to the downside for tomorrow and even for next week. And this move here was a move that allowed it to close at T+1. So here we can put a T+1. When there are such moves that are particularly high or particularly volatile, let's see how much it was. So this candle was roughly 4%. Okay, and today's candle was, from the absolute tops, was minus 5%. So when there are such moves, so one after another, you have always to think about which kind of cycle we are, which point in time we are. So you will be never surprised eventually. Of course, every stocks has a different level of volatility. But this move, to me, it's pretty straightforward. We have at the beginning of a weekly downward cycle, and after 4 days was broken. Therefore, the continuation of the cycle until a minimum duration will be to the downside. Full stop. Now, if we consider more a mid-term view, from this low here until here, we have 305 bars. So potentially, what can we do? We can continue to go further down in order to close this. Oh, sorry, in order to close this T+5. The T+5 can be closed at 339 days at most, and then eventually they can even attach a Bayer tongue or a market fake. Okay, so here for a reversal, we have to wait, first of all, next week, and then we will need to see from next week or in the next 2 weeks if there will be a pushback to the upside. A pushback to the upside will be needed because at a certain point in time in the next week or next 2 weeks, then we will need a nuke back to the upside here to close a T+2 upward cycle. But in any case, without going too much into the future, that's the situation that we have on Geberit at the moment. There is another thing that I have to flag. The second thing is that the plan B is the T+5 downward cycle was closed here. And now here we have started another T+5 downward cycle. And if this is the case, then this is already negative. And as the golden rule of the cycle analysis, whenever a cycle of a certain grade is broken before its minimum duration, then the extension of the duration of the cycle will be exactly in the direction the price was broken, or in this case, the low was broken. So therefore, the price can continue to go down until 189 bars, which is 7th of May 2025. This is the option B. You have to bear in mind if you're an investor on Geberit, okay? Because this is a mid-term view. Mid-term view means, at least here in Tradomics, from 1 month to 6 months. Okay, that's the situation we have on Geberit. But let's see more on the short term, especially next weeks or the next 2 weeks, if we will continue to proceed to the downside and then a return, a push or a bounce back up. Last but not least is ABB Sache. So in the last video analysis, I was saying that this top had to be monitored carefully because in case the price um, had broken this top, we would have had more push to the upside because this T plus 5 would have turned it into a positive cycle. Now, this top here was at 52.44 Swiss francs. This top here was at 52.42 Swiss francs, and this top here was at 52.44 Swiss francs. In a nutshell, this top was not broken for 1 cent. So, in terms of a quantitative analysis, we cannot foresee that the price will return back to the absolute tops because this top was not broken. The needful would have been 52.45, but here we had 52.44, which is exactly the same price. So this situation at the moment cannot happen. So I removed the arrow, and now we have to focus more on the short term. So from this low here, we have a T plus 5 that so far has reached a total duration of 299 bars. This condition is enough to close a T plus 5. Not really, because we would need a subcycle of 3 degrees less that needs to be negative in order to close a T plus 5. So potentially we would need a cycle of this kind, T plus 2, that represent the tail of this T plus 5 to close it properly. So considering the situation and considering that from this low here we have a T plus 2, you need to be aware that potentially we can have a shape of this kind because now we are at the end of the duration of a T plus 5. Therefore, we need a negative cycle, downward cycle to close. And here we have to carefully see what happens. Therefore, this low needs to be monitored over time, and this low is at 47.97 Swiss francs. So if in the next week we will have a situation of this kind plus this one, then we will have all the condition to close at T plus 5 and to start returning back to eventually to the absolute tops. So that's the first key message. The second key message, it's more on the short term, is that from this top here to here, we have 20 bars. So in the next week, eventually, if they wanted to start closing a T plus 2 already into a medium or a minimum duration, then we will have a shape of this kind. Okay. Now, the price today has hit the depth cross between the moving average 21 and the moving average 50. So this was a resistance, but it also needs to be said that here we have 6 days. So potentially here we have the closing of a weekly cycle and then the beginning of another one. So next, tomorrow, we will have to closely monitor if the stop will be broken to the upside and whether this depth cross ongoing will continue to push the price further down. But it's really important now that this low um, needs to stay as it is and not be broken to the downside, because if will be broken to the downside, then the residual duration of a T plus 2 whenever this will be broken will further push the price back to the downside. Okay, here we have also the possibility to hit first the moving average 200 before breaking this low, but you need to be aware that now the situation is this one because we have to close the T plus 5. Okay, so I hope this video has given you a lot of insights. If you like the video, you can always put a like. If you want to release some comments or release some feedback, feel free to do so. If you want to have ad hoc analysis that are not reported here on this channel because you have some stocks that you would like to know more about by using our methodology, feel free to write at tradomica@gmail.com. Thanks for watching and see you to the next episode.